from last year, and we will do a roll call and go around the room, and people can state their names and give a little background if they'd like to. So go ahead. I'll start with Councilor Steve.
Steve Sims. Want anything else?
Jonathan Penrice.
Denise Bush.
Brian Quigley.
I'm Damian Satani.
David Patty.
Brent Walker. That's it. Just for the record, Councilor Ort will be coming in later. And Mr. Carey's been excused.
Okay. And so we have a couple of council people that have been excused that won't be present. And we'll call the meeting to order. And the first item is the motion to appoint a new chair to the Budget Committee. So do we have any either volunteers, or does somebody want to nominate somebody?
I'll make a motion to nominate Denise to the chair.
Second.
Okay.
I don't want it.
So you do have the opportunity to decline that nomination. It's not forced upon you.
I have to ask her if she wants to accept it.
And nominee Denise, would you like to accept that or decline it? It's up to you.
I might need to decline.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just go ahead and roll over if anybody wants to object to that or be good with that, if I'm okay.
So I think that you're volunteering, and it seems...
I'll nominate Damian Santani for chair of the Budget Committee.
I'll second.
Okay, all right. Thank you, one and all.
There's the motion.
So it's been budgeted and seconded. There needs to be a vote.
Okay, and the motion has been seconded, so let's have a vote on that.
All's in favor, say aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Any opposed? And the ayes have it.
Okay, and just for the record, so that Melanie can keep track of all this, so a motion was made and seconded to nominate Damian Santani as the chair of the Budget Committee.
Thank you. And then secondly, we need a vice chair in case I happen to be absent one of these next nights. So do we have any volunteers to take up the vice president spot?
Mr. Chair, I will volunteer to be vice chair if there's no opposition.
Okay.
It would be great to have a motion accordingly.
And do we have a motion to second that?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Patty.
So actually, it would be great to have a motion to appoint Brian as the vice chair, and then, yeah.
Excuse me, Budget Committee Chair. I motion to appoint Brian Quigley as Vice Chair of the Budget Committee.
I second.
And then if we could have a show of hands for,
So there's a motion and a second to accept me as vice chair.
so we've got a motion and a second to have Brian Quigley be the vice president.
And then you want to ask all those in favor?
All those in
Say
favor,
aye.
say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go, and no opposed.
Hearing none, Brian Quigley is the vice chair.
Okay, next item on the list is a motion to approve the minutes from May 15th of last year, 2024 Budget Committee meeting as presented or amended.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from May 15th of 2024.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Denise to approve last year's minutes, and Brian has seconded. Can we have a vote on that to approve the minutes from last year?
And that is absolutely correct, Damien. I just want to, because later on in the process, you might want to have the opportunity for discussion. So the best way is there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, then you can go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
So just,
Is there any discussion as to last year's minutes and notes?
Doesn't sound like it.
And seeing none, now we can have a vote. Can we have a vote to approve last year's minutes?
Say all in favor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it.
so do we need to walk into
Okay, we're time for public comment. This is a public hearing, proposed use.
Hold on a second. You asked if there's any public comment.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Is there any public comment, either from here and present or in the YouTube?
Doesn't look like it. Good.
Okay, and then I'll read this standard letter here. The Oregon Revised Statutes 221.770 requires 2 public hearings to be held to hear from citizens regarding the use of state revenue sharing funds distributed to the city of Stayton. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony on the proposed uses of the funds. Before opening the public hearing, we will receive a staff report.
Can we get that up? Okay.
We're going to bring the presentation up on the screen. So the state shared revenue represents money that the state of Oregon collects on behalf of cities and then distributes it to cities. So we are asking for your approval to accept these funds. They come as the state's liquor tax, marijuana tax, cigarette tax, gas tax, and then a generic state revenue sharing. This slide shows the budgeted amounts that Stayton has in their budget to expecting to receive for the next 2-year period, and the percentage that represents of our total revenue. So in total, this proposed budget has about $2.2 million in state shared revenues. And just a side note on the state gas tax, you might be hearing about legislation with some changes in that area. This is the lower threshold without any anticipated changes. So what the state is currently proposing would enlarge the revenue, and so that would likely increase this amount. But for now, we don't know anything is certain, so this is the lower amount. I do estimate what the state is saying right now. It could add as much as between $750,000 and $1 million to our budget, and it's possible. And that's the summary for the state shared revenue.
Is that it? I will now open the meeting to the public hearing. Did city staff receive any testimony or request to testify virtually regarding the proposed uses of the state revenue sharing?
No.
Thank you, Julia. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who would like to provide testimony regarding the proposed uses of the state revenue sharing? And if so, please state your name and address for the record. Okay, for the audience at home and here in person, looks like we don't have any public testimony. So I will, at this point, being there for no further public testimony, I will close the hearing, the public meeting hearing. And let's move on to the next agenda. Okay, at this point, next agenda would be a message from our city manager, Julia Hedrick.
Thank you very much. Just a heads up, I am going to read my budget message, but I'm not reading it verbatim from the book, so if you're trying to follow along, you'll be a little confused. It's my pleasure to present to you my proposed budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2027. This budget has been prepared in alignment with the city's financial policies, Government Finance Officers Association guidelines, and in consideration of the council's goals and community needs. This budget builds upon the bold choices the council has made in recent years to tackle deferred infrastructure projects, the intentional efforts made to increase public engagement, and the continuation of many wonderful and exciting projects that we're planning to deliver over the next several years. I want to take a minute to review how the budget was developed. The budget has gone through multiple levels and lenses of review. First, directors prepare a budget based on their department needs, taking into consideration rising costs, council goals, community needs, etc. Then it goes through a series of iterative reviews to make sure the budget allocations are vetted, necessary, and make sense. The next review occurs after the budget is finalized in our budget software. We add projections of how the current year will end, which generates beginning fund balances for the new budget. We rebalance the transfers and make sure each fund meets its requirements for contingencies and reserves. At that point, if the expenditure exceeds revenues or transfers are higher than acceptable, additional cuts are made. In this budget, we cut over $500,000 from initial requests at this stage. As budget requests were reviewed, we carefully looked at projected ending fund balances to ensure what is being proposed is balanced for the upcoming biennium and fits with our sustainable plans over future fiscal years. A lot of thought and work goes into the development of this proposed budget, and it represents our staff recommendation. That said, this budget is the community's budget and should be examined, considered, discussed, and questioned. Your review and input will improve the quality of the final product. As we transition to a biennial budget, we have taken a more cautious approach by allocating additional funds to contingency rather than unappropriated funds. We are also budgeting to spend more general fund money rather than putting it aside in contingency or unallocated, which can be seen with the anticipated reduction in the beginning fund balance. This is something we will need to continue to be very mindful and cautious of in our future budgets so that our ongoing operational needs can be accommodated within our resources. That said, the budget before you is balanced, which means that the requirements do not exceed the resources. The proposed 2025-27 City of Stayton budget has a general fund budget of approximately $13.6 million or $6.8 million annually. The total proposed budget is $95 million. For comparison, the budget for the prior two fiscal years combined was just under $75 million. This significant increase in overall budget is primarily attributed to projected grants and system development charges, or SDC revenues, that can be collected if growth occurs at the rate and scale the Community and Economic Development Department projects. Since timing of development is very uncertain, it is unknown if the full amount of SDC revenues will be realized in this biennium. However, we have projected the revenue and associated expenditure in the event that it does. This budget implements the Council's goals. In February of 2025, the Council met for a full day of goal setting to validate or revise their Council goals. In addition to the goals, the Council adopted several action items that they would like to see accomplished over a 2-year period. Each department and fund budget has been prepared with these goals, desired outcomes, and objectives in mind. Throughout the budget, whether it is a capital project or a contract services budget, we have planned to make progress on the Council's goals and objectives. I provided you a table with your supplemental materials that shows how the budget implements the Council's goals and objectives. It's this document. here. Let us know if you need another copy. Some of the major changes in this budget are that it's a biennial budget. This represents a change from the fiscal year budget, which is a one-year budget, to a biennial budget, a budget every 2 years. While there are many advantages, we acknowledge this comes with a sense of uncertainty, and we are very appreciative of the Budget Committee and Council's willingness to give it a try. In accordance with Council direction via Resolution 1122, this budget allocates 15% of the franchise fees towards street improvements. In order to achieve this transfer, a little more than $300,000 in general fund reductions were made from the initial budget requests. We discussed and scrutinized each budget line item to identify reductions that could be made that would not impact the overall operability to the departments. Reductions were made in areas such as training, memberships, materials and services, contract services, and eliminating a cost savings project to switch our streetlights to LED. In order to prepare the budget, staff made assumptions about the library, park, and pool levies. It was assumed the levies passed at the following rates: library at 56 cents per thousand assessed value, parks at 60 cents per thousand assessed value, and pool at 50 cents per thousand assessed value. In the event these rates are not passed, the city will need to make adjustments to the budget accordingly. As a reminder, an adopted budget simply gives the authority to spend funds, but funds will not be expended if we do not believe the matching revenue will be realized. A big change in this budget is an increased focus on asset management and reducing deferred maintenance. In prior budget cycles, the Council has taken the bold step of evaluating and updating rates and fees in an effort to be sustainable in the long term. They have also made tough budget decisions to focus resources towards the failing streets. Unfortunately, the deferred maintenance we see daily in the street system has been happening in the unseen infrastructure as well. We are beginning to identify the magnitude of this, and this budget takes a foundational step toward addressing those challenges by allocating funds to update plans, additional staff resources, and significant capital outlay. This budget moves the duties of the building permit support position, which is approximately a quarter FTE position, to community and economic development, and combines it with code enforcement to create a full-time position. This will allow code enforcement presence throughout the week and will also allow the building permit duties to be more integrated with planning, economic development, and code enforcement. This also results in an increase of time available for the Public Works Office specialists to support the Public Works Department on contracts, capital projects, grant management, and things like that. This budget also adds an infrastructure planning and asset management coordinator position. This is in alignment with two of the Council goals and to support more proactive and strategic infrastructure management. Over the past year, we have identified significant deferred maintenance needs, totaling in the millions, across our water, wastewater, stormwater, parks, and facility systems, and at the same time, the estimated replacement cost of our infrastructure exceeds $840 million, highlighting the critical scale of our long-term obligations. This has underscored the importance of having a dedicated staff member to oversee long-range planning, coordinate capital improvement efforts, and manage asset data. By investing in this role, we are taking a forward-looking approach to extend the life of our infrastructure, prioritize investments, and ensure we are making the most of limited resources. The new position will lead efforts to build an asset inventory, assess system conditions, coordinate master plans, aid in grant application and coordination, and implement capital investment strategies. By improving our ability to quantify risk, track asset health, and plan reinvestment more strategically, this role will help the city avoid costly or reactive repairs, enhance service reliability, and communicate infrastructure needs more transparently with the public. Finally, we're also proposing the addition of a new FTE in Public Works to be split between parks at 50%, streets at 25%, and water at 25%, and this is subject to the park levy passing. This budget assumes a typical cost of living adjustment, or COLA, in accordance with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, and State and Police Officers Association SPOA contracts. Exempt staff will receive COLAs consistent with the AFSCME COLA to ensure wages stay proportionally balanced. This document was the result of a team effort among city staff. As always, thank you is not enough when it comes to the hard work that goes into making this document a reality. I want to thank James Brand, our finance director, Randy Heiberger, our assistant finance director, who both spearheaded the budget. Additionally, a huge thank you to Assistant City Manager Alyssa Angelo, as well as Melanie Raba, and department heads Gwen Johns, Jana Moser, Jennifer Siciliano, interim Public Works Director Barry Buchanan, and all the others who had roles in making this budget a reality. And thank you to our governing body for your continued support and encouragement.
Thank you, City Manager Julia. Appreciate that. Next item on the agenda is the budget overview from our Finance Director, James Brand.
All right, before I get into that, I do need to tell you about some changes to the document. So I kind of want to walk you through these. Unfortunately, this is a large document with a lot of information, and a few things have been found since it was printed. So you should have some extra documents, one being this pie chart. If you can turn in your document to page 23, and you can remove page 23 and replace it with the supplemental material. And the reason for this is just because of the beginning balance. If you do compare them, you'll see that the beginning balance it's just skewed when you look at it in a pie chart, which is percentages. The beginning balance is a single number, and we've basically doubled all of the other revenues, so it makes the beginning balance look different. So once you're finished with that, please turn further to page 44 of the document. And get out your pen or pencil. So on page 44, we would just like to update the number of trials held in the actual year 2023-24. This is at the top of your page, page 44 under performance measures, under the column actual 2023-24. The number of trials held is 37, not 27. Please replace 27 with 37. Then if you go to page 65, there's a missing 0 under street overlays. So on page 65 under capital outlay for street overlays, it's an even 2 million. If you can just write in a 0 there. Then you can, toward the end, you should have another supplemental document that is the parks. This is the detailed line item detail for every budget fund and every line item. This is given to you for further. This is the lowest level that we budget to. So you should have a document like this, and you're going to replace the one on. Unfortunately, these page numbers are a little different. So in your book, there is a, does it say parks or water? I think it says parks.
But it's actually one.
Yeah, there's one with parks that says parks in the very back. So that each fund has documents like this for each department. There's one that says parks, but it has water information. So what needs to be done is that needs to be taken out.
Can you explain that again? I'm sorry.
So it's going to be, I believe, it's going to show 20-32 in the codes. It's going to have under charges for services things like customer receipts, internal water, hookup fees. That's the document you're looking for. It's just at the
But
top.
it says parks at the top.
Yeah, at the top it says 17 parks. But that's not
Yeah.
parks, it's actually water.
So if you find the one with parks and under charges for services, it should say customer receipts, internal water, hookup fees, That's actually information for the water fund. So you need to remove that.
So, so just a clarification, so, because I don't think their budget books have the detail, we gave them the detail, so this is the detailed sheets, yes, sorry. We have it in our budget books, but you don't.
Sorry. It's in your it's in a binder clip with your, yes, supplemental detail. Sorry, if you didn't put it in the back of your binder, then
Here.
Brent's got it right there in the binder, yeah. If you find the one that says parks at the top, 17 parks, and then if you can confirm it by looking at the charges for services, and those are water details, customer receipts, internal water.
I think we corrected them, you must have them, you might have an old one. I'm not sure.
Mine has water receipts.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are we? Are we starting from the back?
No,
These were inside the
yeah, so
the
this
pocket.
is what we're talking about.
right,
and
but where does it go?
It's wherever you want to put it. You don't have to put it in your binder if you don't want to.
Okay.
I don't know.
Talking about this one? It's all parks, now, and the water stuff.
Yes,
This is all water stuff,
that is water.
right?
Yes. Yeah. So that should be water.
So change this one out.
Okay, so wait,
And what here's the plumbing. So this is it.
This is incorrect, so just take these 2 pages out.
So the beginning fund,
Remember debt was the same.
the one that says 856 is the wrong one, correct? The one that says 856 is the wrong one.
856. That's, yeah, this is wrong.
Yep, and this is
There's
the
one
wrong.
more page that's wrong. There's 2
Yep,
pages.
so the other page is right here. These two are wrong.
Yep, I'll take the,
Replace that with these two.
yes. Or actually, yeah. Yes, that's correct.
So this was all the stuff that was in that pocket.
Okay. So this parts, this is correct. This is the replacement. Yeah. These are good. Where's the bad stuff? Sorry, this is confusing. So there's parks. And that's not parks. So I'm going to take these 2 pages out. And you can put
Stick
those
this
2
here?
right there. Yep.
Okay,
You can take that paper clip out.
okay.
Can you go?
I see. Okay.
So the detailed sheets, they can go wherever you want them to go. They're really just for your reference. They're not part of the actual budget document. I generally put them at the back of my budget book, and I put the detailed sheets like basically within the document where the actual budget summary or where the discussion is related to those. But it's really, that's just for you and for your reference to put wherever you want.
Okay. Apologize for that. You can go. All right, so I'll be giving a general overview of our structure a bit. This is going to be a review for those of you that were at the budget orientation. A lot of this is review, but we're going to just briefly talk about our budgetary funds. So on the screen, as part of the presentation, we just want to show you that we have 15 different funds, and those funds are split between governmental funds and proprietary funds. Proprietary are the more business-like functions that we provide, which is mostly the utilities, water, wastewater, and stormwater. So those are each separate funds on the proprietary side, along with their corresponding SDC funds, which are system development charges. And the last proprietary fund is an internal service fund, which is our Public Works Administration, which is the admin function that supports those enterprise funds. So those are on the more of the business side, and then the governmental side represents the general fund. Special revenue funds, and these are funds designated for specific purposes that have revenue for those specific purposes, such as the levies or gas taxes. So this is where we have the street fund, library fund, parks fund, and pool funds. And then the street and parks also have system development charges funds as well. And then the final fund is the capital projects fund, and that's our facilities fund. So this is an internal fund that's supported by other departments, and that's kind of our savings area for building improvements or like a new city hall or something planned for the future that we're trying to save for. So next we're going to talk about the restricted versus unrestricted funds. So this goes to how we get revenue for a specific fund. But restricted refers to funds that are reserved for specific purposes. These are due to contractual, statutory, or other legal reasons. And this goes to all of our funds except the general fund. The general fund, as you probably know, and says it in the title, it's general. This is the revenue we get for our property taxes and franchise fees and some rents and things for this facility here at the community center. But these funds can be used for any purpose. Oh, I switched over to the unrestricted. But basically, general fund, yeah, unrestricted use. We can transfer those funds to any other fund for any purpose. And like we've done in the past, we could transfer money to the street fund or the library fund or the pool and parks, which we do to subsidize them. But you can't transfer the other way. So that's where we have the restricted funds. Obviously, if you charge a gas tax, for example, you can't collect that and then transfer it to the general fund and spend it on whatever you want. So there's rules here. And then part of our fiscal policy I want to share with you, Fiscal Policy 3.6, this is very important, states, when available, restricted funds must be spent prior to spending unrestricted funds. And that makes sense, because if you raise money for a specific purpose, you should use those funds before you use the general funds. So just as a reminder, you cannot transfer generally to the general fund, but you can transfer from the general fund to any other fund. But we want to make sure we're spending the general fund last, whenever possible. So this kind of goes to what we've been discussing recently about the street fees and transferring money from the general fund, allocating some of the franchise fees, which we've done, and that's part of this budget. But I'll just put it out there that if we have money in the street fund and we're not spending it, it doesn't exactly make sense to transfer money from the general fund to the street fund. If there are purposes or projects identified, then it's understandable. But just to transfer money to another fund without particular purpose or need, I wouldn't recommend it. So just as a reminder, we have budgeted a transfer from the general fund representing 15% of the franchise fees to the street fund. And I don't have a problem with that. I would recommend doing that transfer toward the end of the biennium as needed for street projects. I think it's great to have it there budgeted, but I don't see the need in transferring it unless those funds are needed. So that's where we talk about the budget for the street fund and what do we need it for, what are we going to spend it on. So I just want to make sure that we are clear in our plans for that fund and have a need before we do that transfer. So the budget summary, citywide, just throwing out these numbers here. You've heard Julia talk about the 95 million. That is the total resources and total requirements, which makes our balanced budget. It's a statutory requirement that it be balanced. So within that 95 million is 13.9 million transferring in and transferring out. Those transfers equal each other, and this kind of represents double counting of your requirements. So let me explain resources and requirements just a little bit so that's a little bit more clear. So I'm sure you're familiar with revenues and expenses. And those, we use those terms, but we also use the term resources in addition to revenues. Whereas resources is revenues plus your beginning balance. So your beginning balance isn't technically a revenue for the year, but it's the number that you start with in each fund. So again, resources equals your revenues plus a beginning balance. And then on the other side, you've got your expenses, and sometimes we say requirements. So requirements, to make the budget balanced, equals all of your expenses plus contingencies and ending fund balances. So that's how you get a balanced budget, is using the beginning balances and ending balances of the fund. So it does sound like a lot of money. Obviously, $95 million is a lot of money, but that doesn't mean we're spending, writing checks, or transferring all of those funds. Some of it is just being transferred from one fund to another, and then some is the beginning balance or the ending balance. Speaking of the beginning balance, we're starting with 17.4 million. And if you look at that last number, the ending balance is projected to be 14.8 unspent at the end of the budget. Total revenue is 63.8 million, and total spending 62.1 million. So next is a large chart with a lot of numbers and columns, and I find it very useful. I look at this chart quite often, in fact throughout the year. And
This is on page 21 of your budget book.
yes, I did try to put those page numbers at the bottom of the slide, so you might reference it up there. But yes, on page 21. So we've got each of our 15 funds down the left side. And of course, this is resources. So we're starting with the beginning balance. So as we move left to right, this shows the major categories of our resources and the different revenues that we collect. So we've got the tax levies, charges for services. So you can see at the bottom, the total tax incomes, 9.2 million. Charges for services is about 30 million. Grants, I'm imagining this is probably the largest grants we've ever had in the history of the city. But of course, this is for 2 years, but 20 million in grants, and so on. So then the first bolded column there toward the right is the current revenues, and then you can add the transfers into that, and there you get your total resources. So that 95 million is at the bottom right. So this breaks it out by fund and by revenue type. On the flip side of that is the total requirements for the city. So again, by fund, this is also on page 21, yeah. And then showing the major requirements and expense categories. First column being personnel, about $14.5 million, materials and services, and then capital outlay, which represents our major projects. Debt service, that's our loan payments, $2.4 million. Then the total expenditures, and then there's our transfers out that match the transfers in. Our total contingency over $4 million, plus unappropriated, which is the ending fund balances. And that comes up with our total requirements by fund, again, that $95 million amount. I'm just looking at my notes here. What was I trying to say here? I'll leave it at that. On page 23, the revenue summary of all funds. We put this into a pie chart and compared it to the previous year. So by using a pie chart, we can compare 1 year's revenues with 2 years' revenues pretty easily. To show you some trends that are happening here, you can see the major thing that you can point out here is that grants are changing quite a bit in percentage. They go from about $8 million to $20 million. I do want to point out that with a 2-year budget, we do have to make some estimates on grants, and most of these are grants that we know pretty much a lot about, but there are 3 grants in here that we have not been awarded yet, and so we're watching those closely, but we are hopeful that all 3 of those grants will come in, and there could be more grants that we don't know about yet with the 2-year period. If there is another grant that comes available and we apply for it and get it, we just need to do a supplemental budget to increase our expenditure authority there. So hopefully you'll be hearing more about grants throughout the year. 2 years. So the other
Budget
thing...
Chair, do you mind if I ask a question?
We've got a question here from Mr. Patty.
Is that okay? Sorry, I didn't mean
Yes.
to interrupt you. I just was curious, does this, if we don't get awarded those grants, would the corresponding expenditures not be in place, or would you come back to us with some kind of budgetary adjustment if that were the case?
We certainly could. So right now, both the revenue and the expenditures are in the budget. It would be poor practice for us to try to spend that money unless it was a project that we have other funds identified for, and there is one such grant opportunity that if we don't get it, we do have SDC funds that we would probably go forward with this project. So we certainly could come back to you and reduce the budget in the other areas where we wouldn't go forward with the project.
That's my second question.
One other trend, if you did pick it up, with the increase in the grants, most of the other categories were reduced, except for charges for services. And the increase there can be attributed to the SDCs, actually. It's not that we're charging our customers more, and we are a little bit, but not to that magnitude. So most of the increase in the charges for services is because of the increase in the system development charges that we anticipate receiving over the next 2 years with the amount of growth that's planned. So moving ahead to the revenue assumptions for all funds, I just want to put some of these assumptions before you. So we do anticipate collecting the full property tax rate of $3.328, our general tax rate. Marion County does help us estimate what that will come out to be based on assessed values of the properties in Stayton. So that's what's put into this budget. And then the local option levies. Currently we have a library levy of 40 cents per thousand assessed value, and we have the recreation levy at 50 cents. So in the second year of this budget, we are projecting the library levy to be at 56 cents, which is on those May ballots you've hopefully you've mailed and are being counted. And then we have the recreation levy budgeted at $1.10 per thousand. That's planned for the November 25 ballot. Some other revenue assumptions in here is that the charges for utility rates, this is in line with the utility rate study done by the FCS group and showing the increases there, mostly about 3% across the board. And then, like I said, grants are quite a bit higher in this budget. And just a little bit about the street fee. As you know, it's gone up to $10 per month for residential homes, and we don't have an increase planned in here. FCS Group did have us at $10 even before we went to 10, and then had us increasing at $4 per year thereafter. But with the street revenue plan that you guys rolled out, we didn't increase the street fee beyond the $10 at this point. That's something that we can do later, but for this budget, it stays at the $10 rate. Also knowing that the state gas tax is likely to be increased because of the legislation the state is going over right now. That could increase our revenue from ODOT as much as 70%. So we'll see what happens with that.
Mr. Chair, I had a question, if I can. So that gas tax, if that increased, would that automatically go into our street fund, or does that go into the general fund?
It would go to the street fund.
Okay, thanks.
So as an overall expenditure summary, again, we have some pie charts that compare last year to this year. This is on page 24. And you'll notice the big change here is in the capital outlay projects. So again, this is due to the grants and our SDC revenues. Those both give our utility funds more money to spend on deferred maintenance and projects. So that's what's here in that capital outlay area. The other change here is that the debt service is declining. That's as we pay more in principal, and we don't have any more debt planned to be taken on. And I'll also make a comment there that we did budget additional principal payments on our loan. With money available and what the interest rates are doing, where the rate we're earning is declining, and we do have some variable interest rate loans, so those rates are increasing. So currently, we're still earning more in the LGIP on our interest earning rate is higher than the debt interest rates that we have. So I don't feel any urgency to make additional debt payments, but we're anticipating those numbers both to go in the wrong direction. And so I budgeted additional principal payments in the contingency line item, so that if we feel it's advantageous to us to do that, we can do that within this budget. Just as an overall personnel summary now on page 9, you'd have to jump back in your documents. This chart shows the 57.52 full-time equivalent positions. This is an increase of a little over 3.5 positions more than the prior year. But not all of that is real bodies. So as we had a question earlier today about the pool FTE, and this adds 1.1 FTE to the pool, but in reality it's not adding any more staff or even any more staff time. It's just aligning our budget with reality. This is something that just wasn't budgeted fully in the past, and I think it's just difficult to say exactly why or how, but after COVID, it was difficult to determine how much staff we needed at the pool. Actually, last year at this time, we did increase the FTE at the pool a little bit, but for the same reasons, we were just trying to realign it better with what reality was with our staff. And it's just hard to predict with the number of swimming lessons and pool rentals and things that are going on. But this budget does align it with what our programming level is at this time. So that's what the adjustment is there. We are adding a new position in Public Works Administration. That's the number going from 4.8 to 5.8. That is an asset management position. This is a key position that I think would help our Public Works identify deferred maintenance needs. This position would work closely with the master plan development and understand the city's assets, probably help us identify grants that are out there and a little bit of grant management, but just be an overall person that can help manage the assets of the city, which are growing and yet decaying at the same time.
I have a question.
James, may I interrupt? We've got a question from Brian.
James, is that position in addition to the still unfilled civil engineer position?
Yes.
So are we making an assumption that the civil engineer position would not be doing that work?
It's a completely different job, is my understanding.
That
So,
doesn't really answer my question, but.
And when we get to Public Works Admin, we can certainly talk about that more. But yes, the civil engineer is going to be doing capital project management, as well as it's been modified a little bit to really be more of the city engineer. So doing, plan review, planning level review, those types of things, whereas this position is more managing and monitoring and tracking the assets and the long-range plans. So sort of doing the planning work, identifying what needs to be done, and then the civil engineer is essentially helping to manage the construction and design of those projects.
Okay, I'll
But-
wait till we get to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
the other full-time position is being added to Public Works, and it's split between 3 different departments, but you'll notice a half-time increase in parks, a quarter-time in water, and a quarter-time in streets. So that represents one body that would be split across those 3 departments, mostly helping to maintain the parks. And then there's a quarter position add in the Community and Economic Development. And this is taking an existing person that we have that's a 3/4 time position right now and phasing her up to full-time. That's the Code Enforcement Officer. But some of those duties that she'd be picking up was not code enforcement, but building inspections.
No, building permit processing. Yeah.
That one. So the next slide is about our debt summary. This is on page 95 of your document. But I just wanted to provide an overview of the city's debt, including the interest rates we have and different balances. We don't plan on adding any more debt. This represents loans we have for the wastewater plant, the wastewater systems, water, and stormwater. We also have an additional loan. That last line item is a stormwater loan from the general fund, and it has one more payment on it, so that should be finished in January 2026. And then a capital outlay summary, pages 92 to 94. Just wanted to chart the total capital projects by fund. You can see the wastewater's got a little over 12 million in projects. Streets, water, and stormwater also have some major improvements. Most of these, again, are either grant funded or funded through SDCs. But there's a lot more capital projects that are needed according to our deferred maintenance schedules. But just wanted to show you the chart for the total capital outlay.
James, I've got a question. Could you go back to that bar slide again? And forgive me for asking in advance if it's something we're going to be touching on later, but since I've been living here 17 years, is there something going on either through the government that is making us have to update the wastewater, the sewer water? Why is that bar the tallest, or will that be something that we'll be addressing later tonight or tomorrow night?
Well, certainly it'll come up, but the wastewater plant is our largest asset if you want to add it all together. There's a lot of equipment and buildings out there. A lot goes into that. It also has to do with the pipes in the ground, the collection systems, and remember that this is servicing not only Stayton but Sublimity as well. So it's a large facility. There's quite a few staff out there and just a lot of stuff going on. 7.5 million of these projects are collection projects, and then we have about 4 million in plant upgrades, including the electrical work that needs to be done there. Unfortunately, when the plant was built, it was built with technology that was, or the electrical components that were not even at the time very current. So we've got some electrical upgrades that need to be done at a large facility.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So that's some overview, just some general trends and summaries that hopefully are helpful to you as we start. But next is the general fund itself. So now those were general comments about all of the city. Now we're just focusing on the general fund itself. So this is page 31 of your document. This is, again, a pie chart showing the current revenues for the general fund. So taxes and levies make up the bulk of it. Transfers in are transfers from other departments that rely on staff or resources from the general fund, so that helps fund it. Franchise fees are another big portion there. The grants and contributions is where we include the HUD grant. This is a downtown apartment renovation project. There's a small T-Mobile grant in there and a Safe Streets for All grant. Of the franchise fees, most of that, over half of it, is the electric franchise with Pacific Power. About 1.4 million of the 1.9 is that franchise fee. Intergovernmental is where that state shared revenue resides.
Is that pie chart in this document?
It might not be. Yeah. Yeah, again, the presentation is not the same as the budget document. It's got some supplementary material.
And we could certainly provide the Budget Committee with a copy of this presentation, if that would be helpful.
So talking about the general fund expenditures, then also on near page 31 of your handout, of the expenditures, police represents 46%. Next in line is administration at 28%. And then general operations, which is where we budget our general fund subsidies that are paid to other funds. And that's where the HUD grant is as well, and our transfer to the street funds. So that's kind of why general operations is so large. So that's a quick overview of the general fund.
So going into our general fund, the first up is police and Chief Johns.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, and Budget Committee, you'll find police, the overview on page 32, and the slides are just highlights. So going through general overview of police, I do like to highlight that we're 24/7 coverage. That is often unusual in small cities. Small cities sometimes are contract with the county or other entities, And you see it in our region where smaller cities too don't have staffing to cover 24/7. So some of our neighboring cities are not 24/7. This is something we're proud of, that we can offer this to our community because things happen 24 hours a day. They don't wait for police to be on duty or not on duty. Increase quality of life for everyone in our community by reducing crime and the fear of crime. So the fear of crime, whether it's happening or it's not happening, is just as important to be addressing. So being visible, out on patrol, doing walkthroughs of the parks, and making people have that sense of safety and security in their homes and their community. Strengthening partnerships with other law enforcement agencies through specialized teams, joint training and events. And I feel like after COVID, we were able to do that. Chief Friesendahl and I both came to this county and this city with some concepts of building those partnerships, and we came in with the, we just want to be friends with everybody, and didn't know what the barriers were or preconceived barriers to that. So we've really built some different partnerships within the county. Strengthening community relationships through events, education, various programs. I think at least once a month we've got some sort of community event that occurs. So this morning we had coffee with the cop. Again, nice opportunities to have one-on-one personal engagements with our citizens and people in the community. Enhance traffic safety through increased participation in grants, traffic safety enforcement events. And that's one of the things that James was talking about with our grants. We renew those each year, and they allow us to put officers on the road that just simply focus on traffic enforcement and traffic education. So some highlights from 24-25. Supported Stayton and San Am Canyon communities through participation in events. We hired a part-time record staff that had been vacant for a period. We filled it. The person that we filled opted to kind of change what she was doing, away from career and more family, and so it sat vacant again for a while. But we have Kim Weibel. She's doing a fantastic job, and the reason that this is important to us is if our full-time person of one goes on vacation, is out for any extended period of time, all those duties fall on me or the other supervisors. So having a backup person that can just flow right in, that knows the task and the roles well, is really helpful. But additionally, she's allowed us to expand and do some things that we've been wanting to do for a while, because she can go in and do data mining, and she can do some of these, I guess, more fluff, but great things that we've been wanting to do for a little while. Partnered with the library for our first annual Safety Town Camp. Very successful with the littles and also our middle school, high schoolers, and then a lot of community partners that participated as well. Completed our accreditation process, and were awarded accreditation in January 2025. That was a big lift, but it speaks to that we're not just saying we're following our policies. Other people have reviewed it. We've provided proofs, and they've signed off to say that, yes, in fact, we do what we say we're doing. Strong focus on training of our current staff and increasing our professional capacity. We've got a large number of officers that have less than 5 years of experience, and so us to focus on training is really important for the future of our agency and where we're going. We supported Special Olympics Oregon events and competitions. We hosted a police forum. And these are things that we're engaging the community, educating, and allowing that back and forth and conversation, and allowing people to know about what we do. Obtained several grants for equipment and to support accreditation process. So we got the NARC Ranger, live scan machine. Officer Gamble received a life-saving award, and Sergeant Butler and Officer Leonard received achievement awards. And those are not handed out very readily. We've had I think in the 5 years I've been here, 2 Gamble's the second life-saving award, and those are the first achievement awards. So for 25, 27, we're going to be focusing still on training and always and ongoing. It's important. There's changes in case law. There's changes in legislation, but also just to keep people fresh on skills. But we want to build our in-house instructor force. So, for example, just this last week, we sent Sergeant Butler and Officer Leonard to a de-escalation class. So they will now be instructors and be able to instruct our staff here instead of us having to send our staff other places to receive valuable training. We hope to facilitate and implement our first annual Citizens Academy, so much like the forum, a great way to engage our community, educate them. This would be actually putting them through a mini police academy, so experiencing the skills training, some of the laws that we go through, and just that glimpse into the life of a police officer. Increase public education on social media of our investigations and enforcement actions. We've started that with our monthly blotter. And we hope to, it says fill a detective position, and what that is, we've had them before, just based on staffing needs and our staffing experience and training. That sat vacant for a while, but we hope to fill that so we can put a little more different focus on how we handle our investigations. And then continue work on a Marion County radio project.
Any questions for Chief Johns? Okay, next up is Community and Economic Development.
So, good evening, Budget Commission, City Councilors. I'm Jennifer Siciliano, the Community and Economic Development Director. We work on long-range planning for the future of the city. We administer land use ordinances of the city. This includes reviewing annexation applications in our urban growth boundary to make sure that they're consistent and align with the city's overall comprehensive plan. I provide property owners and developers directions on subdivision applications, whether they align with our current zoning codes. I also work on partitions and site development and smaller applications such as alleyway vacations and conditional use permits. I also review land use ordinances, such as the proposal for interchange development zone, the sidewalk vendors we just did, downtown parking surveys. I oversee the code enforcement officer who proactively enforces issues for quality of life in Stayton. She does everything from taking down signs on utility poles, you wouldn't believe how many there are, to sending out notices for not mowing grass. She proactively does that, and she also acts on complaints that she gets, being cars parked over 72 hours or people living in RVs and other violations, such as too much rubbish. Our department also supports economic development efforts, attending the revitalized downtown Stayton, attending chamber network meetings, and other regional partners. This provides showing the business community that the city is interested in their existing businesses and potential businesses that are coming into. I also review things like change of use permits, which is what the city has somewhat instead of business licenses. So any new business that comes in, they apply for a change of use, and I look at if that use is fits into the zone that they're in, and also look at parking, making sure they have enough parking. I also do things such as sign permits whenever there's a new sign, just make sure it's up to regulation. And I also deal with solicitor's licenses, people that come door to door. I'm reviewing those as well. I also apply and manage for a range of grants. James mentioned the HUD Main Street grant that is ongoing. It's been taking quite a while, but that's about $450,000 coming into renovating some apartment buildings above 3rd Avenue. I also manage the Stayton Safety Action Plan, and also the community improvement grants that came in, and the Community Prosperity Initiative. But that's also in the budget. And the good news about that is that that's $20,000 that the state pays once a year, and we're going to be able to fund the community neighborhood grants going forward.
Just a clarification, that's from the county, not the state.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Let's see. Oh, yes, okay. I've been also supervising the office specialist that works in the Public Works Department, who also receives building permits. So historically, that has been housed under Public Works, but it will come under the responsibility of Community and Economic Development. So I wanted to explain that a little because we changed around what's going on. So the office specialist gets the building permits, and the county does most of our inspection work, but we do take some of the fee for administering the applications, and we also charge a fee for my review to make sure that it aligns with zoning, so that would be setbacks and also design review. So what we're doing is we're taking that administration that was under Public Works and moving it to Community and Economic Development. We're hoping that also streamlines the process. So when you come in for a development, you'll be talking to me. Public Works does work inside that development process. They do site development permits, which are more about developing the actual site, and then it will come back to a building permit, which would be under my department. So we can do that. All right, so I mentioned highlights. We maintain networking with the various business organizations. I've done 16 pre-applications, so those are meetings that we usually hold on Thursday afternoons, and I answer usually questions about zoning and partitioning from the developer, but then when they're ready to get more answers, we schedule a hour-long meeting, and we have Public Works there. I will invite Marion County, if it's on like a Marion County road, and other agencies in the area to all give their feedback, so when somebody comes in for a development, they know all the different answers and all the different processes you need to go through. Just to mention, in the next 2 weeks, I have 4 of them, so it's definitely ramping up. I did have 7 land use applications that went to the Planning Commission that doesn't include administrative land applications. So when you do a minor site development, that's still being notified to the abutters, but it's something that I do administratively in my position. So the 7 went to the Planning Commission, and there was a public hearing, and that ranged everywhere from modification to site plan, a partition. There's a lot of other things. So we had a total of 182 notices for code violations. What our philosophy is that we try to get the violations fixed. So very few of them end up going to court or citation. There are a couple in court that are in the process right now, but we usually get compliance, and that's what we want. For the lawns to be mowed and the RVs to be removed and the cars. So let's see. So just highlights on some of the commercial development. We had an expansion of the orthopedic clinic at the hospital. We also had an additional industrial expansion at Pacific Court. You'll be noticing that the Stayton Vet Hospital will be expanding. They're over doubling their capacity. I know you've probably seen on First Avenue, they bought up a whole bunch of lots. They just got their building permit. Like, they just gave us everything they needed to get the building permit. So you'll be seeing that any day or any week. And then there have been groundbreaking on family building blocks. And Ida, you'll be seeing infill on Ida and Evergreen. We're having a submission of a triplex and multiple duplexes there because it's a medium density. And if we go to the next one. So I'll be applying for the Sustainable Cities program, and I know that I did mention that in our work session about economic development, that we're trying to align the goals of reviewing the economic development strategy. So that's going to be one of the things that they're going to hopefully look at. And we've kicked off the Stayton Safety Action Plan. You'll be hearing more about that coming up in the next month or so. And then I mentioned the community improvement grants. We have murals, and I've been working with the grantees to make sure that they're going to get the projects done before the fiscal year is over at the end of June. So there is also, just to let you know, there are multi-acre annexations that have been applied for that you will be hearing very soon. There's 3 of them, all within the urban growth boundary. One is 21 acres, another parcel is 17 acres, and another one hasn't been submitted, but I've been talking with them, and that will be 60 acres. So it's my job to look through these applications, make sure that they conform to what our zoning is, what the community wants, and so you'll be hearing, that's a lot on my plate, and you'll be hearing about that coming up. And also the downtown parking, we did the downtown parking survey, but we'll be working on putting up new signage and looking at the striping, and that's all upcoming. All right. Thank you.
And I wanted to speak before we ask if there's any questions, because we did have a question from Councilor Ort, who is running late this evening, and probably others, about the Sustainable Cities Year program, because the name of it sounds a little like interesting, because it's not essentially making a sustainable city necessarily. It's a program through the U of O, and I'm just going to read you the overview. The Sustainable City Year program is an example of Oregon innovation and leadership. We leverage existing resources to create meaningful society-wide value that benefits all parties involved, undergraduate and graduate students across disciplines, including business, planning, public administration, journalism, architecture, and more, engage in the projects identified by partners partner cities to develop recommendations that bring the best of the creativity, freedom, and rigor of academia to the real world. By getting students involved in real projects through their coursework, the SCYP, the Sustainable Cities Year Program, prepares students to enter the workforce and keeps talent in Oregon. Moreover, the vast majority of student outputs get incorporated into community plans and projects, creating lasting impact for years into the future. And then some of the example of projects and classes, they've done things on public transit, bicycle transportation, public relation campaigns, stakeholder engagement, I'm just kind of quickly, budget analysis, civic design, historic preservation, land use and growth management, workforce and industry analysis, economic development, strategic planning, community asset mapping. So there's all sorts of things that they do based on what we identify is needed. And then if you look at this, the table that is prepared, there's quite a few things that we've identified that this program could potentially help with, such as reviewing existing economic development strategies, identifying barriers to economic development and looking for solutions, evaluating codes and standards to maximize developer improvements, study impacts of transportation on development, assess funding options to update the housing needs analysis and prioritize recommendations, and evaluate and update policies and procedures and standards for annexation. So those are the things that we're like, this would be a great project for a class or two to chime in on. So that's what that is for. Questions on community and economic development?
Mr. Chair, I got a couple questions.
Yes, go ahead, Member Sims.
That community improvement grant that you said was coming from county, Jennifer, do they have to approve these, or are there going to be any restrictions on that $20,000?
So the $20,000, they've talked to us, and it's for economic development. So they've definitely said, if you want to approve like quality of life, murals, things like that, that's considered economic development. So they've pretty much accepted what we want to do.
And we have an agreement, so it's a 3-year IGA, I think, or something. I don't know what the term of the agreement is, but it's $20,000 a year for the term of that. We actually have gotten that in past years, and I think it was $15,000 a year, but they increased it this year to $20,000. So we know that we have $20,000 for the next 2 years through that is for economic development purposes. And James did specifically talk to the person about the the neighborhood improvement grant, and they said that that would work.
Yes.
I just want to make sure they weren't scrutinizing every grant that we approve, but okay. And the other question I had was about the downtown parking. You mentioned that. Mm-hmm. Did we put in for a grant to help pay for the, maybe look at changes for downtown?
Yeah, so council just passed the resolution at their last meeting. I don't think we've
okay,
put
that's
the
why I wondered about that, because I knew it was I thought it was the last meeting. Okay, thanks.
And I think it's a technical assistance that they would do the plan rather than any money for it, I believe.
Mr. Chair.
Got another question? Go ahead, Brian.
It's not a question per se, it's just I want to draw attention to Jennifer's challenges in that position. Today, the Senate had a hearing for Senate Bill 974, and what 974 is going to do is it's going to reduce the 120-day development application timeline down to either 90 or 45 days. And what she just talked about, all those things she just talked about, it's going to be impacted. And so if that happens, it's going to have more frequent planning commission meetings, obviously more time for Jennifer to review all this stuff. And the most concerning portion of the whole thing is that in the legislation, it's directing the LUBA to have the outcome of an appeal, if we were to lose an appeal on that because we didn't meet the timeline, we'd be responsible for attorney fees and engineering fees. So really, I would encourage everyone to pay attention to when the legislature's in session, because this is the kind of stuff that comes up and it's directly going to have an impact on our community. So So that's all I got to say about that. And I did submit a letter of opposition on behalf of the city today, as well as I think Councilor Patty did, so. Thank you.
Go ahead, Member Cranston.
Sorry. It looks like your personnel services, so that's people, doubles, which is understandable for a 2-year plan, but your materials and services only goes up by like 75%. Are we expecting that to drop 12% over the next, each year? Over the next 2 years, or is that?
I think part of that is that we're increasing the percent. Right now, we only have 3/4 of a staff, and we're increasing the staffing as well. James might be able to explain the personnel stuff a little bit more.
Total materials and services.
So just to clarify, so you're saying the materials and services is going from,
I'm just wondering how we're going to add more people and they're going to use less stuff.
well, I don't think they're using less stuff. If you half the 1.5 million, it's more than,
Half the 1.5 million.
am I looking in the wrong thing? Oh, I am. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the police department. That's why I'm not understanding what you're saying.
It's not any more bodies, though. It's just reallocating staff time to this department. So the number of bodies is the same.
I'm not
so
actually worried about the people. That actually makes
Okay.
sense. It's the materials and services go from 200,000 to 350. Are we expecting to use $50,000 less stuff over the next 2 years? I mean, I'm assuming that's paper and IT and all these other things.
It's only an increase of 25% full-time, I believe. So it's just a quarter person.
Okay.
And I think part of...
We're still not hearing what I meant.
I think I'm hearing what you're asking. The contract services amount is going from 120, this, am I looking at that right? To 185, yes.
There are a lot of one-time grants in this area. The Safe Streets for All, Community Prosperity Initiative, some other grants are dropping off. So there's just a lot of one-time expenditures that aren't steady year to year.
What page are you on?
39.
39. So, yeah, essentially it's going, currently, the current year is 198,000. It's going to 342,000 for the 2-year biennium, which is the equivalent of, what, 170. So it's going down about $20,000, but a lot of that is contract services. I'm just looking at other... I think that's the main.
So I can explain the contract services. So we do hire out traffic engineers and just regular engineering to review plans, and I get those comments. I think there was an assumption that we will get a city engineer, and that the city engineer will be able to do some of that.
Okay.
That's being, yeah.
That answers my
Yeah.
question. Because I'm trying to figure out where, if I do more work, I have to actually spend more money on my fuel and other things. I can't do more work and make those numbers go down, so. And inflation kills that number too. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for community and economic development? Next up is community center.
Thank you.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. I am going to review the highlights for the community center over the past fiscal year. Up first was the kitchen remodel. Majority of that project, it's done now. So if you haven't walked through the kitchen here, I encourage you to do that tonight. The majority of that project was funded through grants from the Pacific Power Foundation and the state of Oregon, who had some ARPA funds that we were able to use thanks to the Meals on Wheels services recommending that to us. It was specifically aimed at facilities that host congregate meals. And so that was a huge reason why we were able to do this project, and the remainder of the project was covered by city funds in the budget. Other projects we did in the past year, we completed painting of the foyer, which you walk into, and it's nice bright white. The majority of the building uses at the community center are for Meals on Wheels. They are not the majority, but they are one of many. So the Meals on Wheels is the Northwest Senior Disability Services, and they are here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they do delivery meals, and then they do congregate meals on Fridays and bringing people in. Additionally, this is rented by private parties, city meetings, such as what we're doing tonight, and a lot of other entities are using this facility also for their meetings and other events throughout the year. So quickly, somewhat to go over the highlights for the next fiscal year or the next biennium. You'll see in there's a rather large ticket item in capital outlay for installation of a new audiovisual technology in this building. I wanted to touch on that a little bit. You see a price in there. I want to remind everyone this was a proposal that I got from one company. We would bid this project. This is not the end-all be-all price of this project. It was a proposal, so I had a realistic view of what we could be looking at for this, and that is essentially redoing the system here, making it plug and play. So this saves on, and we'll be seeking other bids, as I mentioned. Completion of this project will reduce staff time needed for meeting setup. It's essentially what we asked the proposer to give us is a plug and play. We walk in and we plug in and we can go, rather than coming down an hour and spending an hour down here setting up for a meeting. It would literally be a plug and play. Sound throughout this room would be consistent, and there won't be quiet areas, which we deal with now. The majority of the speakers are behind all of you over there. Otherwise, we've got two speakers right over the top of us and no speakers back here. So when we have large crowds for, say, student recognition at a council meeting, the people in the back of the room have a hard time hearing. So it would fix all of that. It would bring in, install cameras that are already in here rather than us setting up the camera over here. And it also would be a projector that you're not struggling to see because we have the lights on. Just kind of making it a much easier scenario in here for events. Additionally, an updated system may allow us to offer the sound system for use by people renting the facility, which could be an additional draw. And we would be able to potentially charge for it or raise our rates, depending. We'll have to look at that as we go forward. But we definitely get requests to use the sound system, but it's so touchy that we usually have to turn people away and have them bring in their own equipment. Moving on from that project, talk about the flooring in this building.
Chair.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I just had a real quick question, if I could.
Yeah.
So I thought I heard you say that we had one company that bid that one out. Did I hear that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Estimate, yeah.
Estimated. Okay. It just seems really high to me, and I'm just wondering, is there any opportunity to put that out for some kind of RFP to see if we can play with it? Oh, okay.
Yes, no, I will 100%. This was really just, I didn't have any idea what we were even looking at and what we even would need. And so they came in, they've done several other cities. Okay. And so I said, I need it to be plug and play, and I don't know what that means. And so they gave me, I have a detailed estimate, and we would definitely put it out for bid at that amount.
What's the company name?
Key Code Media.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The next project you'll see in the budget, in the proposed budget, is the removal and replacement of the remaining asbestos flooring in this building. It's this room we're sitting in, and it's pretty easy to see the edges of all the tiles are curling up. We cannot get matching tiles anymore. This lovely 1978-ish, 79 tile they're no longer making it. So you'll see some areas, I think especially out in the foyer or out in near the door here, where there's some mismatched different colored tiles. It's because we can't get it. So that project is in the budget. And finally is completing the remainder of interior painting in this room here. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I'm going to
and
actually.
there was one question, actually.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it more under the council budget because it's a council item, but we also envision having a new council dais as well, so that we're not just sitting at tables with skirts. There'll actually be a more formal place for council to sit, but we'll talk about that more when we get under council.
And there was a question from Jordan earlier today regarding the revenues for rentals of this building. In the detailed budget that was handed out, just looking back, now we have steadily been increasing, especially in the last year. This year, we're projecting that we're going to bring in $53,874, which is, we had budgeted $27,000. So, yeah, quite the increase there. And the other previous years, we were kind of lingering around $30,000. So we're projecting for the biennium, I guess it wouldn't be is it double, James? Sorry, I'm getting confused now looking at it. That does say 23 to 25, so that was 2 years, sorry, at the $53,874 was 2 years. So we didn't have some record-breaking doubling of fees. I saw Denise's face like, wow, but no. So that was over 2 years. It was the $53,874, so we're projecting about $60,000 in rental revenues for the community center over the next biennium.
Any other questions for the community center?
Chairman, I got one question.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Thank you. I had a question about how the capital outlay is listed. So is the asbestos mitigation and new flooring the same project, just two different facets?
It's the same project. One is just coming in and doing the mitigation where they seal off the building, remove all the asbestos, and then the next part is just the flooring.
So it's, both of those are tied to
Yes, yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
Over the past year, the ceiling was brought up a couple times. Are we putting that off for a couple more years? Just asking.
The painting.
I believe that's part of the painting.
I don't think so. I'll have to double check what we figured out there. I don't think that was included in the painting. It was just the walls.
Oh. We'll have to, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see whether or not we have cost savings in other areas, because it would be really sad to have all beautiful new things.
I was kind of hoping to see that one because I keep looking up in here since 1979. It's like, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and there may be ways that we can be smart about how we do that painting when they're taking that stuff down. You know, paint parties.
That's what I said.
Like fun.
Other community center questions? All right, I think next up is municipal court, and James is going to cover that.
So our court is presided over by Judge Jonathan Clark. He's appointed by the council, and he's assisted by a part-time court clerk. And I'm happy to say that we now have double coverage for the court clerk. We've been using this last year to train up a backup, and now we have 2 different people that can serve as the court clerk. We've also added a bailiff on days that there are trials or we're prosecuting misdemeanors, so that's added some security to the court. The cases have increased, so we've estimated the number that will receive this, will prosecute or process this year. We're estimating 500 cases this year. That's up from 445 previously. And so the same for traffic violations is up. Ordinance violations up to 10 from 2 in the prior year. And then trials have increased from 37 to 55. And then the misdemeanors, which we've added this year, we're estimating to have 35 prosecuted by the end of this year. And in terms of the highlights for next year, unfortunately we have a large water leak in the basement foundation, and since we do have a nice courthouse now with some new furniture and walls and things, we want to preserve that, so we'll have to fix that. We're estimating $8,000 in the budget for that. And then we are planning to change court days from Wednesday to Thursday, and so we're in the process of changing that over. But otherwise, the court's been going pretty strong and pretty well, and we've got our prosecuting attorney, Mo Brown, that's been there, and we're happy with what he's been able to do so far. And so the prosecuting of misdemeanors has gone as planned, I'd say, and going well. So that's all I had as a court update. Happy to take any questions.
What time is the operation of court on Wednesdays?
I believe it starts at 2. Yes.
So it's not full 8 hours.
No, there are days they have trials and it goes longer, but it's usually just one afternoon a week from about 2 to 4. 2 to 5, the staff are there longer, but in terms of people being heard on their cases, it's a couple hours a week. And it's not every week of the month. There's no court this week. So it's about 3 times a month.
Am I missing something? It says the proposed budget is 258 and total revenue is 198. Are we losing money?
You could make that assumption. There are fines that come in. And they're
To me in the budget.
yeah, they are certainly related. Money comes in from fines. Actually, we don't receive all of that money either. A lot of it goes uncollected, but those are the fines we receive from violations. But to operate the court, that's how much it costs to enforce the rules.
And I would argue that.
That's why we're doing this then.
So I think that you have a municipal court it's more of a livability issue. It helps ensure that you have accountability for people that are doing things in your community that you don't want them to be doing. So that's the why you do that and why we increase the court's purview to include low-level cases, low-level criminal cases, is to have more accountability locally rather than it going to the county. And Chief Johns is here to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I was just going to point out, even on violations, percentages go to the city, go to the state. There's money that goes to DPSST, or police academy. So just if there's a ticket written, 100% is not coming to the city. There's Oregon revised statute that dictates where the money does go to. So it supports state stuff as well.
Well, I guess my only question is, what other options do we have as opposed to losing money?
Well, county used to manage traffic through justice court, and that's no longer an option. Could go to circuit potentially if there's agreement with the county, but
So we did have an East County judge that basically took care of the same thing.
correct, but that has gone away. And I believe the mornings on Wednesdays are for traffic trials, correct? Or only in the afternoons?
As
I don't know.
scheduled. I know that they have
Yeah.
trials on some mornings,
Yeah.
but not every.
Yeah, correct.
Other municipal court questions? Is there a question over there or just conversation? Okay. So we'll move on to governing body, which is the city council, and I have that one. The city council is a 6-member elected body that is essentially the board of directors establishing rules and setting policy. In 2024-25, some of the highlights were that they did their goal setting, continued training and relationship development between each other as well as within the region. Some of the highlights that we're looking at, as well as they passed many resolutions and ordinances and have done a fine job of helping make sure the city continues running. In 2025-27, one of the big changes is actually we're moving where that community improvement grant fund is. Last year and the year prior, we had funds for the community improvement grant budgeted out of the council. We've actually moved that, as we said previously, to community and economic development. So that's why when you look at the overall costs for the council budget, it looks like they're going down quite a bit, and that's one of the major reasons why. I mentioned previously that we have budgeted funds for a new council dais and tables for the council meetings. That's a capital outlay of about $23,000. Again, that was based on an estimate that Alyssa got from one entity. We'll do some budgeting and explore whether or not there's a cheaper and better way to do that still has more of a permanent aesthetic. Another change is that, and it's a fairly minor change, but we're eliminating the contribution to small municipalities advocacy coalition, SMAC. That was an organization of small municipalities that was organized, and they still may meet. I just don't know what the actual contribution buy-in is going to be, because the lobbyist that was organizing the group resigned, and there hasn't been a good discussion and alignment around what that looks like going forward as a group, and whether or not there's a cost for anybody, or whether or not it's just people getting together and meeting. So when we had to make some cuts to align the budget, that was proposed to be cut. I think that's all I have for that. Any questions about anything in the mayor and council budget?
Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Hayes, go ahead. Thank you very much.
Is that what you want? $23,000. It'll really cost that much?
Again, that was the estimate that
was
Alyssa
an
got.
estimate. Holy caramba.
That was an estimate that I received. It's a local company out of Canby, I believe,
Okay.
that builds these. It's a portable dais, so it would be able to be removed and everything. But like I said, it was just to get some sort of cost proposal to put into the budget.
That's
It doesn't mean that's what we're going to spend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just have a hard time fathoming tables and chairs.
Well, and it's not just tables and chairs, and I guess that's the thing, is it's something.
It's like a wooden.
Yeah, and that back there is the old dais.
Okay.
It's going to be bigger than that, look better than that, be more mobile than that. So that's the goal that we're going to try to work towards.
Okay, thank you.
Got another question? Go ahead, Jonathan.
Where did where did the idea for the new dais come from? was the reasoning behind thinking that?
From me.
Yeah. And we've,
I'll tell you why, because we've received so many complaints from folks at home or watching online that they couldn't hear us, number one, so that's why we did that. Number two, because it was so spread out and we have what you have here, we're trying to pull it together and have that new feature with the audio and the cameras and everything deliver more of a message and a way for people to understand. So we get comments all the time that people at home can't hear us. And it's because of the environment. So we're just trying to pull it a little bit together to make that more presentable. So that's my
and I think as a community, as a council, you deserve it. You deserve to have a professional-looking council meeting. You know, you have cities that are much smaller that have much more formal and professional-looking council chambers than just a bunch of tables with a table skirt. And so it just kind of it's elevating that a little bit, and we certainly will make sure that we're being as frugal and efficient as we can. But I think that the community deserves to have a more formal council presence.
Go ahead.
I said, in my humble opinion. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to administration. And that is also going to be me. The administration office is me, the assistant city manager, the finance department, our special projects person, our community engagement coordinator, sort of all the behind the scenes and in front of the scenes people. Some of the highlights from this past year, the finance team received the 9th distinguished for the 9th year, received the Distinguished Budget Award from the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association. And we continued improvement in community outreach, engagement, and transparency, and we will continue to do that. Some of the highlights for this, I think this I meant to say 25, 27. We actually are moving the facilities maintenance position. It's going to continue being funded out of administration because it's doing a lot of general fund supported facilities, but it's going to be managed out of the Public Works Department. We felt like that was a better and more logical location for that. Just continuing to keep doing the work that we're doing, but doing it better. So that's the highlights for administration. Any questions? All right. Next.
General operations. So this part of the budget includes the transfers to the other funds in support of their operations, some non-recurring expenditures that aren't specific to the other departments. And then this is where the general contingency and unappropriated ending fund balance for the general fund resides. So in terms of the current year, this is when we spent those ARPA funds, $921,000 that the council allocated to the wastewater and stormwater funds. And of course, the HUD grant that we've talked about, it was fully budgeted in the current year, but what we've been able to do so far is just the planning and engineering for that. So we've rebudgeted $425,000 in the 2025-27 budget, and that's when the construction will take place, and we expect to finish that grant in this 2-year budget. So for the highlights for this budget before you, we do have that transfer to the street fund from Resolution 1122 that you passed in November. So this is the $286,995, which represents 15% of the franchise fees. That's part of the city's street improvement funding strategy. And then the other subsidies to the library, parks, and pool are in here. And these are increased by 3%. There was a question today to us, and that 3% increase is just kind of this standard inflation amount that we decided to add to these funds. So the library transfer has typically been $70,000 per year. Parks has been around $190,000, and then the pool's annual number is $131,000. So those have been increased by 3% annually and added to the budget.
And can I chime in on that? Because I think that there was a question about that, and that really, I think it came from me in that those subsidies have remained static in the past, whereas the general fund has increased by 3% because of the increase in the assessed value. And so it just seemed like, well, why does the general fund continue to get to see that increase? And, granted, it may not be sufficient, but the general fund is seeing a 3% increase because of the increase in assessed value, but these other funds that are getting subsidies aren't seeing any increase. It's staying static. So it's really kind of they're losing money over time rather than staying static. So that was the rationale behind the 3%.
So that's it for general operations. Are there any questions for that department?
Budget Chair.
That's you.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Thanks.
Mr. Patty, I didn't see you.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, I don't know if now's an appropriate time or maybe towards the end of everything here, but, reading through this document, I noticed that there was another segment that lines out part of staff's efforts to meet this 15% franchise figure that we authorize in Resolution 1122. As part of that, they discontinued a cost-saving project for the LED streetlights or whatever. I don't think that's a good idea personally. Just as a steward of the funds for the city, I think that maybe we're shooting ourselves in the foot, especially after hearing what James had said earlier about allocating money towards the street fund if we're not using it. So I might make a motion later on this. I just wanted to go ahead and put it for consideration now and maybe discussion if we need.
That's actually the next slide topic, so if there aren't any other questions, that's okay. If there aren't any other questions under general operations, we'll move to streetlights.
So yes, oddly, we have a separate section for streetlights, and that was a great introduction. So the streetlight fund has a budget of $236,000 and change for the power and maintenance costs related to 552 streetlights. We were approached by a company and we heard their proposal, and there is an LED conversion project. They've come to us in the past, and it looked like the return on investment was around 10 years typically, and so we passed on it. This time around, there's a short-term opportunity thanks to the Energy Trust of Oregon and some rebates. So this project, which would cost $120,000 and convert our streetlights to LEDs, has about a 6-year return on investment. And yes, we did have to remove it from the budget to fit the constraints in the policy. So, just point out that the deadline is approaching for this, so if we did want to act on it, we would need to do that soon. But it is something that is an option out there. And then I'll just point out that although never implemented by the City Council, there is a municipal code that does provide for a streetlight service charge designated to recover the cost of this service, and the city has not implemented that.
And I actually took that off the slide, which James didn't see, but that's okay. This has been that has been discussed in the past. I think a year or so ago that came up. It's always been a note that says we could, and I think that the budget committee at the time or the council had us look into that a little bit more. And our city attorney essentially said, "Well, it's really not quite that simple anymore." And so I can go back and find the analysis that we shared with the budget committee at the time. And so Member Cranston is questioning that.
I've been on the budget committee for, when was Scott Mitchell mayor? 15 years now. We've had that conversation every year. Is there a way we can just remove that option?
She tried.
I tried, and he brought it up.
Sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
No, I meant like.
Remove it from the code.
Change it from the code, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Manager Julia and James, let me interject here on behalf of all of us, since we've been here in good attendance for the last couple hours. We are missing 2 of our council persons, but as Brian reminded me when I was here on my first outing, 3, sorry. We're missing 3 of our council people, but the council people, for edification of all of us here and the folks at home, they act as equal peers. They're not any higher or lower than, say, me just being a citizen. So we're missing 3 of them. Are we right about now at the point where we're going to really start delving in and dissecting the funds? I was thinking maybe we could take either a little break and go for an hour, or since, unlike past years, we're missing 3 of our members.
So this is not the time where we would anticipate you diving in. We still have the library and public works to get through. So we absolutely can take a break, but I would not recommend stopping because we want to get through as much as we can tonight, and that's more that we can get through tomorrow night. And maybe we don't have to do a Thursday, but we really are planning on doing a Thursday. So really, we were anticipating that tomorrow night would be when we're really starting to talk and discuss motions.
Okay. Okay, so with the other members, are you okay? Let's just take just a quick little break just to get up and stretch our feet, just 5 or 10 minutes, and come back. And then, so we're moving through 2 or 3 more categories.
Well, as many as, what we envisioned is as many as we can get through by 9. We were going to have a hard deadline at 9. That was my understanding.
Okay. Are you guys all okay with that? Okay. All right. Let's get back in our chairs at 2010, please.
Did you?
I'm lost.
Yeah, that was 2010.
Military. No, I'm still lost. It's okay.
Thank you for bringing that up, because my butt gets sore for some. So we completed street lights, and Julia, why don't you direct us as to who's going to take over with library fund, please?
With the library fund, we're going to have Jana present.
So, well, there I am. So some highlights for us. We've imagined and implemented new ways to provide services to our community. We've expanded the use of the play-based model that we use as the premise for our Discovery Alcove to other spaces in our children's area. We had a record-breaking participation in summer reading and a successful experimentation of a collaborative rather than a competitive winter reading program. Some highlights for the next 2 years are continued exploration of possibilities for program spaces and materials, and we'll continue to expand the walls of the library, establishing us as an active community partner and increasing literacy to a variety of locations. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. David, I think you had sent the answer about my transfer, the question about my transfer, and it's at the original, like the old amount, so it's the 70,000. And then,
Thank you.
no problem. So a big portion of that goes back, so like, yeah, so, cool.
So I'm sorry, Jana, can you repeat that so that everybody understands what the question was?
Yeah, so David had asked what my transfer amount is, and so the library has for several years received $70,000 a year from the general fund. In the next 2 years, we're also getting a little bit more. It's like 6,000 more because of the 3% increase, and then we actually pay 50,000 of that back each year in transfers back to help cover administration costs and like general fund things too. So we net about $25,000 from the general fund. So.
Chairman, one quick, okay, I'll just start doing that.
Last year, we did something for the AC units. Did that get taken care of?
So we've already had one replacement, the next one's coming in the next couple weeks, and then there'll be one after that. So we're a third of the way through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many?
There's 3 in this year, and that's the end of them.
Okay.
Or not the end of them, but that's the last. There's 7 HVAC unit systems in the library. We've been replacing one a year for the last several years, and you guys gave money from the facilities fund to do the last 3 altogether.
Okay, I just wanted to make
So-
sure that project was
Yeah.
getting completed because I didn't see it
Yeah.
continued. Okay.
Cool.
Mr. Hayes?
First, great job. I've come and visit you and checked everything. You're really good with your books and everything.
Thanks.
I was a little surprised by the $7,000. Just, did the phones fry?
So the phones are actually, the phone system is actually original to the addition. So the phone system that the library has is a 2007.
Okay.
It's I have several of them who have actually fried and have no caller ID and no actual some services that would need, and it's been on the plan to take care of that at some point.
Yeah,
So.
the only reason I brought it up is you were trying to stick to your budget as
Yeah.
close and keep it there, and it's like, oh, can
Yeah.
I have some new phones?
I have phones that don't work. So
Oh,
like
okay.
we're at the point where it is. Yeah.
And that's another that's an example of one of many of the things that we had a lot of conversation about, of like, do we not include this? It's really tight. But at the end of the day, they need phones, and they need phones that work.
No, totally understood. Is that also where you just got an estimate on that?
Yeah, and the estimate is a little bit old, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah. No problem.
Other questions for the library fund? Okay, wow. Swimming pool. I believe that's going to be Alyssa, correct?
Yes. All right, the swimming pool. So highlights from the current fiscal year. We offered during the swim lessons, or for swim lessons during the swim season, 785 spots. They continue to be a popular draw. April's lessons filled up in 2 minutes. And the amount of spots that we're able to offer is based on instructor availability. So it's a little bit harder right now this time of year. We've got the lifeguards are still in school. So not as many lifeguards available to offer lessons. So as we get into the summer months, the availability of lessons will grow, and we may even be able to offer lessons during the day, just depending on staffing. We've got continued partnerships with some different groups in the community. We've got ProMotion Physical Therapy, who uses the facility for patients that have mobility issues. The Kiwanis Club just recently finished up 3rd grade swim lessons at the pool. Local schools from the Canyon have 3rd graders brought in, and they're taught water safety. And this is an annual program that the Kiwanis Club sponsors. The National Guard, they, prior to COVID, were using the pool and have re-upped, and they're back with their in-water training. And additionally, we've got 3 swim teams from the area that use the pool facility. The Manta Rays, Stayton High School, and Cascade High School. And the Manta Rays, they use the facility year-round. We also have been offering special swims at the pool. Spring break, we had 100 swimmers each day. There was actually a line. I think I heard that Jordan may have been there with her kids and had to wait. But as people left, we were cycling new people into the pool. It was super popular. We've got quite a few private rentals for parties and other events. And then also we get a lot of end-of-year school pool parties from the different schools locally. This last year, we also completed the pool facility audit, and you will see that in the budget there are some capital projects related to that, as well as many other projects that were identified in the pool audit, but they're either have been completed because they were just small little quick fixes, or they're scheduled to be completed via building maintenance, so they aren't going to necessarily show up in the capital outlay. The big one that you're going to see under capital outlay, I think I'm on the next page, sorry. I skipped ahead, is the slide suction. This was something that was pointed out in the pool facility audit, that there's a suction tube that goes into the water. It is gated and everything off, but they had concerns about it, so we are going to be looking into what we need to do to fix that and make sure that it is good to go for the facility. Also, there is an increase. James addressed this a little bit earlier, but I'll just follow up with that again. There was an increase in FTE to accurately represent the actual hours and employees. So this budget is based on current FTE, full-time employee, although everybody except for one is part-time, reality. So the reality of what we're actually needing employees for. So it was difficult to determine post-COVID what it was that we needed for staffing hours and funding in the budget. So this small increase is bringing it, this increase is bringing it up to what we actually need, the reality. And while we did have one this last fiscal year, a small increase, it wasn't enough. And then finally, we've talked about it a couple times tonight, a recreation levy will be required to keep the pool going. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No pool questions? Okay. Oh.
So the the recreation levy is jumping from 40 cents to $1, I think I saw?
It's 50 cents. So recreation is the parks and the pool.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it is 25 cents and 25 cents. So each going, so 50 cents total. Yep. Nothing's been decided, and it hasn't been voted on by council yet, but the proposal is $1.10, and it would be 50 cents pool, 60 cents parks.
Okay. And that's what's assumed in the budget for 26, 27,
Yes,
essentially.
yeah, it won't start until July 1, 2026. That's when the other levy runs out.
Okay.
Any other pool questions?
Hi. With the increase in the levy, is that going to be showing up in increased capital outlay for the pool? What is the extra income going to be going for? What's your plan?
Do you want to take that?
I can probably take some of it, and I failed to mention something in my presentation. So this increase is to maintain what we're doing now. There will be some additional capital outlay. We're working with the Santiam Community Endowment, the pool endowment, they're going to be helping us with some of these projects, especially in this upcoming biennium. Do you have anything to add?
So basically to determine and James might have to come, or yeah, he's there, in order to determine what the levy amount might need to be, we looked at the costs, both the capital outlay needs, the staffing needs, and anticipated revenue, and that's where we got to that anticipated 50 cents per thousand need for the operating levy. So it's essentially covering what we've identified as necessary to operate the pool.
And is that going to be focusing on just day-to-day, or is that also factoring into continuing maintenance and catching up on the deferred maintenance?
Yes, it's catching up on, deferred maintenance.
So this is a sustainable type of meeting. It's not just a making do.
Right, well.
We hope.
There are some that might say we could do a lot more, but that would come with a much higher levy than I think we are assuming.
Yeah, the study identified a lot of mechanical problems and things that needed to be upgraded, but then also some options for adding on new features and things at the pool. But this budget doesn't add any of those things. It's mostly taking care of the facility itself and also utilizing the endowment.
Jordan, you got a question?
Yes. So where do the levy dollars show up on here? Like, does the levy money come in to the general fund and then get transferred in?
No, it comes directly into the pool fund under the taxes line.
Under the taxes, okay. So then the transfers, that is just money from the general fund?
Yes. And the grants and contributions is the pool endowment.
Okay. So then the transfers from the general fund for the half, so for 2026 is 136, 954? That's the half?
Pretty close, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for the pool?
I guess I do have another question. So the taxes are going up, but then we also need more transfers?
Yeah,
So
again,
we need more from the levy and we need more from the general fund?
so we started with the general fund subsidies maintaining. So the general fund subsidies, sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, but we kind of took a baseline for each, the parks, the pool, and the library, and established a baseline transfer, increased that by 3%. So that,
Yeah, and you missed the part where we explained that 3% increase. It's essentially, the general fund assumes a 3% increase because assessed value can go up 3% a year, and so the subsidies had remained static, whereas the general fund had increased by 3%, and so we determined that all the entities that were getting, all the funds that were getting subsidies from the general fund should also see a 3% increase, because otherwise that subsidy is actually going down. So that was so it's going up a little bit, but it's just sort of staying static, but staying static at the same. Yes, constant with the same growth, apparently.
But her question is not wrong.
so
I
that,
didn't say it was wrong.
No, I know, I'm
Yeah,
stating,
yeah,
making a
yeah,
statement, her question
yes.
is not wrong.
so there are 4 revenue streams for the pool. So the general fund is that one.
Yes.
Okay, then there are the charges, the fees we charge the people using the pool. That's charges for services, and those fees we've raised approximately 5% in each of the last 2 years. So we've been raising those fees. Then there is the endowment, and that is funded at $100,000 in this next budget. We had a conversation with the chair of the endowment, and we have a handshake agreement that we could use up that endowment by the end of the next levy. So the next 5 years, starting next July, not this coming July, but 2026, we would spend all of that all of that endowment, which is at about $200,000 right now. And then finally, so what else do we need? So that the last number that we've calculated for the levy is what is remaining to meet the expenditure need. And that's how we got to the levy amount.
Okay. I'm just going to ask a question. If it was already answered, you don't have to answer it again because I'm going to watch the video. Did anyone ask why funds that are subsidized by the general fund need to be increased by 3%?
Nobody asked that question specifically. That is certainly a decision, that is a recommendation that we are making. It doesn't have to be, but then that would affect all the funds that are currently getting subsidy because they'll have a 3%, they'll have that equivalent reduction in their resources.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on pool?
I don't know if this is a question or I just want to express something here. And I think it speaks to kind of what Budget Committee or counselor or whatever we want to call ourselves right now. My confusion is when we were talking about the levy increase and, discussing what amounts, I was under the assumption, I guess, and maybe it was a misassumption, that the transfers would go down, and we would see truer numbers put forward to the public of how much these resources cost. And so I guess for me, this is just a little confusing, personally. So, I don't know, just a thought.
So I'm hearing a question that we need to get back to the Budget Committee on. So as a reminder, we planned on 2 days of presentations. Tomorrow we might actually get through, and we might not get to the conversation. And then we have a gap day that would allow staff to answer questions that you have. What I'm hearing is essentially a question of what would it look like if we didn't have that 3% increase in transfer to the funds, and we can answer that question for the Budget Committee and get back. Is that, James is looking at it.
Yeah, just, if you want to see the transfers go down, though, it would have to be more.
I don't. It was just a question. It's not necessarily, I don't necessarily think either way or have an opinion either way about it yet. But if anyone else wants to see that, I don't necessarily.
We'll see how the conversation goes.
Real quick, just to respond directly to that, that's not necessarily what I'm asking for at all. I guess what my overall point here is, as we look forward strategically and looking at these levies, my hope is that the transfers ultimately just go away and there's truth in the levy amount and what it's costing the folks in the jurisdiction. That's just my thought.
Thank you.
So I guess I have a question. Or is it safe to say that there's 4 buckets of money to operate the pool?
Right now, yes, until the endowment's gone, yeah.
Yep, okay.
And we're looking at closing out the endowment during this plan.
No, sorry. Then in the next levy period, so 5 years starting in July 2026.
Closing out the endowment by the end of that 5 years.
Yes.
I have a question. What is the point of that?
The endowment?
No, what is the point of exhausting it?
Knowing that there's a lot of one-time capital needs and that the endowment doesn't have a lot of members right now, and it doesn't have a revenue source. So it's just seeing without a long-term sustainability of it, we're planning to spend it and not raise the levy if we didn't have to.
It won't be there anymore either.
It is intended to be used for the pool, and that's why we budgeted to use it.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Does the endowment just go for facility maintenances to the pool, or does it cover other things?
They do have some requirements. We've always proposed facility improvements, and they've always accepted that. I don't think it's meant for operational, like salaries and that sort of thing.
Correct.
Okay, does it go towards any sort of grants for the lessons, or is it just going to basically the pool facility?
It's essentially aimed for the facility. For instance, when I met with them last year, they said, we can pay for these projects, but we can't pay for the pool facility audit. That's not something we can pay for.
So they can.
Yeah, and we do have the Stayton Friends of the Pool. It's kind of like the Friends of the Library sort of group that during COVID, they kind of went defunct somewhat and weren't up and running. They are getting their group back together and up and running now. So things like the swim lesson grants, that sort of thing. In the past, before COVID, they would have done those kinds of.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was any ongoing things that the endowment was doing.
Yeah,
but it is just more capital projects.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a great opportunity to say that the endowment is a great idea, and we'd love to have more support or more people supporting it. But I think the reality is for this particular endowment, it was funded by one particular person that passed away many years ago. And so there hasn't been any contributions to the endowment other than just interest earned on its investments. So it's been being used and dwindling down and down and down, and that's kind of been its history.
Are you guys ready to move beyond the pool? Okay, I'm going to start this. We're sort of calling an audible a little bit in our presentation. For those of you that haven't met, Barry Buchanan is our interim Public Works Director. He is here working with us. He's been here since December, is that it? But he's actually been in New Zealand for the past month. He did a lot of work before he went on some basic budget behind the scenes stuff, but then left and ran away. And so I worked a lot on the budget slides and the budget narrative, and so he's going to do some of it, but we're sort of tag teaming
Judy's going to
it.
do most of it.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
But he has asked, and I think it makes sense, rather than following the order of the budget book, we're going to go straight to Public Works Administration. And then we're going to go backwards in the budget slides, so that's where we're at. So Public Works Administration.
Page 78.
Page 78, thank you, in your book. So some of the highlights, we continue to provide service and projects while being down a Public Works Director for most of the year. We still have the civil engineer position vacant, and we have a vacancy in the office for the office specialist position. The good news is that is next Monday, we're going to be filling that. And then, like I said, we got Barry in as interim, and so he's helping us as we move forward in finding a permanent Public Works Director. Some of the projects of note, and this is a lot less than staff had, but I just wanted to note some projects that the Public Works Administration Department has worked on over this past year. The Ida Street sanitary wastewater trunk line construction, the aquifer storage and recovery system, just starting that. We were held up quite a while by the state as they were doing some behind-the-scenes analysis that needed to be done before they could move forward to the next step. We did the Wilco Road Industrial Area Stormwater Feasibility Study and are now moving into the planning and design for the regional stormwater facility that is funded through federal dollars. That was approved in the budget, so that's money that we actually will have. We also started the Stormwater Master Plan. That's underway. We have been, actually, it's probably pretty close to getting done now. Riverfront Park, the clearing, grading, parking lot design and construction, that was funded through some ARPA funds through Marion County. We applied for and received a Safe Routes to School grant for pedestrian improvements at 3rd and Fern Ridge. We applied for and received an Oregon State Parks and Recreation grant for improvements to Mill Creek Park. And we will get some of that project done. It's going to be a multi-phase project, so we're going to continue to actively work on getting that project under contract, but then also identifying, I think actually I'm skipping ahead on my slide, identifying opportunities for other elements to get constructed. And then they've just continued with right-of-way permits, site development permits, stormwater permit review and inspections. And then looking forward to the 25, 27, and Barry will highlight this a little bit, really an increased focus on asset management planning for deferred maintenance and replacement costs with the addition of the asset management planning coordinator position. We have identified, we have 17 capital projects that are in the budget for next fiscal year or next biennium, where we anticipate finishing the Stormwater Master Plan, hopefully hiring a new Public Works Director, and then just continuing all the planning level review, public improvement plan review, and all of those things. And I'm going to, I guess, pause there and let Barry talk a little bit more about the asset management and maybe a little bit about your background and why you know what you're talking about. That might be helpful. Sorry.
I make things up. Okay, my background for a start off, I'm. Do I need it closer? Yeah, okay. Hang on a second. Let's get it right up here. Last time I didn't even turn it on, so, you know, we're one step ahead this time. Okay, I'm originally, as you may tell within a couple of seconds, that I'm not an American. I'm originally from New Zealand. And as Juliet just said, I was back home for my son's wedding for the last month, so I haven't been here in post or helping out at all. My background is as a public works engineer, engineering particularly in water and wastewater disciplines. I started off as a design engineer, ended up as a coordination administrating engineer in Thames Water in London when the privatisation exercise occurred in Thames Water. I also went for Thames Water internationally, working in 13 different countries, upgrading water and wastewater systems around the world for Thames Water under their privatisation exercise. I came to America after marrying an American when I was working in Puerto Rico, and currently live here in Salem. I've worked in my own business as an asset management coordinator for the last 10 years, and that's what I call my current expertise, and is asset management and public works administration. So a little bit of background. Any questions about me before I start waffling about you? No? Okay, let's go. A couple of things that I've noted that stand out to me in the Public Works Department as it stands right now, that you're all very aware of. You're short of staff. Very short of staff. You've got 2 engineers at the moment trying to do the work of probably 4 or 5. And hence we have a problem in that we're not achieving our total spend in our engineering department, and we're not in actual fact keeping up with the work that we're actually got on our books. So firstly and foremost, I'm pleading with you guys to in actual fact support firstly getting an administrative engineer or a city engineer in place. Secondly, putting in place an asset management personnel who will undertake the work associated with long and short-term planning, and also help with detailed coordination and finding and funding, again, getting granting monies in place. I'll talk about that a little more in detail. And then, of course, getting rid of me and putting a permanent person in place. As I see it within the engineering department itself, as it stands right now, we have just hired the new specialist assistant, and she will start next Monday. So that is a great thing in itself as well. So we'll have a skilled person in that administrative position working forward from that time on. I see that at the moment we have 2 engineers who are struggling to do their job. Not that they can't do their job, just that they are totally overwhelmed with the amount of work that they've got to do. And therefore, those 2 engineers, I believe, should be relieved of some of their duties, and those undertaken by other people, other staff members within the engineering group. The 2 project manager engineers that we have right now should be strictly working on capital works projects and making sure that those capital works projects are designed, implemented and coordinated into operations, such that operations can in actual fact undertake the long-term operations and maintenance of the equipment in a logical and safe, economic and environmentally sound way. Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you that's not happening right now. And we've got probably several examples that every one of you around this table can probably identify where we have had engineering issues or implementation issues associated with not poor engineering, but lack of ability and time to in actual fact oversee the projects in a rational and proper way. Therefore, I'm proposing and strongly suggesting your support to help us get, and I know that we've got the advertisements out at the moment for a new city engineer. That new city engineer will take the responsibility of coordinating the capital projects. They'll take the responsibility of, in actual fact, doing engineering administration work. They will take the responsibility of helping, as Jennifer said, in this community development field and making sure that that work is all coordinated and put into a practical and viable way of operating. I am strongly suggesting that we take on, or the city takes on, in parallel to, or excuse me, parallel to that person, what I'm calling a planning asset manager. That person would be responsible for the work associated with the long-term and the short-term planning work inside our organisation. Long-term work being the capital improvement and capital works that's required to keep us both operational in terms of replacement and renewal of existing assets and new assets for growth. Question? No? Oh, sorry. And the work associated with that, I'm going to emphasise by saying, Julia said earlier that you have an asset base of about $850 million in this organisation. I'm going to round that number and say that you have a asset base of about $1 billion. It sounds better when you use a B rather than an N. Anyway, so if we, and the simple evaluation that I've done at this stage, just looking at it over the last 2 or 3 months, you have a set of assets inside that $1 billion of about 25% of those $1 billion worth of assets are in failed or poor condition. That includes your roads, it includes your underground facilities such as pipes for stormwater, water and stormwater. It includes your parks, it includes your wastewater treatment plant, it includes your water treatment plant. They all have deficit and failing assets in them as it stands right now. And those things are not being picked up in what I would call appropriate planning methodology. You are currently about $4 million behind in your strategic planning efforts. That is, your master plans are out of date significantly, and they are not, in actual fact, in a mode that can be utilised that is rationally backing up what we're talking about today. I believe a person needs to be in place to, in actual fact, make that a viable and realistic output documentation, and support that output documentation that you can and actually in fact rationally answer any one of the questions that are going to be asked today, tomorrow and over the next week associated with failing assets. So I'm saying that you have about $250 million worth of failed or poor condition assets in this city as it stands right now. We are not funding that in this budget. We are trying to keep our head above water with the funds that we have available. And as it is currently, we don't have justification for me to even say what I just said. So therefore, I believe and ask specifically that we can put in place an asset management planner that would coordinate this exercise. I do this and ask this for 2 reasons. 1, I believe you need the planner. And 2, I believe it supports a succession plan for the organisation, for the engineering and the administration department. I believe that if we take on a city engineer and get a good city engineer as it is right now, we can train that person to be a fantastic Public Works Director and make this organisation actually gloss as it moves forward. And then your asset manager would ultimately move into your engineering, chief engineer, city engineering role, and you would have a succession plan in place that can in actual fact help and make the organisation successful long term. I think I've said too much, haven't I, Julia? So any questions on what I've spouted so far, and perhaps that will promote some more discussion. So and we're going to run out of time.
Yeah, well, so we generally want to end at 9, so I think that my thought is we have some conversation and questions about what you just said, and then we probably won't go into the other sections, but I guess questions, comments, that's a lot.
May I go first? Thank you.
Through the chair.
The members might have a lot of questions, so I'm going to let you guys decide if you want to end at 9 sharp. But do me a favor, so I can call y'all out, raise your name placard or something, and welcome here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll let Mr. Patty go first.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. First of all, Barry, welcome back. Thank you. The other thing, too, I just had a question about, and maybe a refresher from Julia. Why are we leaving so much money in unappropriated for the Public Works Administration Fund?
That might be a James question.
There are policy requirements for the ending balances. I didn't feel like it was a lot of money there, but that's to meet policy, basically.
Who's next? Mr. Hayes.
Can I add something to that before you move forward? One of the things that I have noticed at the moment is it's not the unappropriated value that's left on the table, but we are actually leaving money on the table unspent because we don't have the staff to do the work. And that's a major problem, particularly when we've got such a deficit in deferred maintenance and unresolved problems.
And that might bring up what I'm going to ask right now. As far as I know, last year we approved for a civil engineer, and we just do not have him yet. And then we had the position you're covering vacated. Okay, so there should be funding for that salary as well. So we are just not getting the applicants?
So I can answer that to a certain extent. When the Public Works Director position was vacated, we had just advertised for the civil engineer position, and it was open till filled, and we didn't do a big push because we kind of felt like we weren't quite sure. There was a period of time before it was vacant, and we didn't do a big push for the filling because we were in a state of limbo, and we didn't feel like we didn't know what we were going to be asking people and bringing people into. And so it wasn't until fairly recently when Barry came on board and did some assessments and did some evaluations and some recommendations that we really changed that from a civil engineer to city engineer recruitment, and we do have that back open, and we haven't gotten any applications, but we will continue working in earnest at getting that out.
Because basically I'm just saying, I agree with you. Yeah, we have 2 engineers, we need 2 more, basically. And it's like, well, yeah, the money should be there and the positions are open, so what are we doing to advertise that? Just throwing that out there. Is anybody going to bring up the roundabout and its delay?
So we could talk about that. That's really more under streets. And so
okay,
maybe
well,
we
it's
can-
sitting here on my list in your...
And it's really the delay on that is there's some stormwater things that we're resolving through the stormwater master plan and some other work there. And then the funding for that, we had originally received $4 million in congressionally directed spending, but that was in the last federal fiscal year budget that has yet to be actually adopted. And then recently, they stripped all of the earmarks out of that. It is proposed to be in the next fiscal year, federal fiscal year budget, so we're still hopeful for that, but it won't get built unless we have money, and right now we don't have money. But we're nearly done with the design. We just needed to pause because there were some stormwater issues that we were working on.
Well, it's stormwater and funding. I will
Yeah.
strengthen that, because without the money we can't do anything. With the money that we have available, the design is really up in question as well. So, yeah.
Jordan, your turn.
Thank you. Congratulations on your son's wedding. Okay, so this position that you're talking about, is this person going to take over the asset, or no? Is this person going to take over the master plan planning? And
Okay.
we talk about our master plans and getting them done, and we have like our streets, and then we have them rated, and then we have them rated again, and then like the stuff just doesn't really sometimes seem to go anywhere. So is this person supposed to be like,
You've hit the nail on the head. The information doesn't go anywhere. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody here. It is a matter of being able to utilise that information and prioritise and take the information and come out and formulate a plan. Now, we have spent a lot of time and a lot of money in the organisation doing those initial plans, those ratings, and getting that information. Without time available to, in actual fact, sit down and evaluate those plans and that information, it's kind of dead in the water. The data's there. The data's available to utilise and come up with major plans and ways in which to do things. i.e. selection associated with priority coming from the pavement index is a great way to, in actual fact, identify which project should go forward as far as the streets are concerned. But doing that alone is, in actual fact, somewhat detrimental, because not only do we have in our streets surface stuff that you see, we have at least 3 sets of pipes under the ground that also are deteriorated or in a state of decay. So without having all the master plans together, having them parallel, being able to stack them and evaluate and prioritise in a rational way, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit by moving forward and following a strict single identified project list. Okay, so what we're trying to do right now.
That's actually what I've been asking.
Sorry?
That's actually what I've been asking for
Right.
for a very
But
long time.
So what we're trying to put in place right now, what we as a team are trying to put in place right now, is an identified way of getting all the projects listed so that we can prioritise them as a single prioritised exercise and come up with a rational plan of how to move forward and get everything done in any particular street so that we're actually fixing everything at one time. Because it's ridiculous to go in today, put a new surface on, and 2 days later go in and dig it up to put a new water pipe in because the water pipe's failed. And then 3 days later go in and dig it up because the sewer's now backed up and burst because there's a tree root growing out of it. So we're trying. The idea of this new, or the concept associated with the new asset manager, is that they will do they will do 2 things out of 3. I am not proposing that they take over the total writing of every master plan or asset management plan, as I prefer to call them. I am proposing that they will be the master coordinator, the master utilisation of the data, and formulating the big picture plan at the end of the day. So instead of having a consultant we spend our money on consultants, we actually have that person in-house who is knowledgeable with in-house subject matter experts within the organisation that can come up with a rationalised answer for prioritisation. Am I waffling too much, or am I answering your question?
No, but then just to follow up to that, so that's not something that the Public Works Director can do.
The Public Works Director has another role.
Okay.
The Public Works Director has the role of taking that information, helping finance and administration and actually put that into a financial plan that can be utilised within the organisation, utilising the money available and chasing down the money that comes out of those grant applications. The asset manager, is the person that does the planning, puts the planning in place. It's the upfront piece. The Public Works Director has a much greater role to make sure that the operations are working correctly, that the planning's working correctly, that the design and implementation is working correctly, and there's a transfer of design, implemented to design, constructed items going into operations that can be operated and work as a whole. Okay? So, yes, the Public Works Director can do it, but then he's not going to do the rest of his job.
I just want to note as well, in addition to the street aspect that Barry was talking about, the other thing that he's highlighted to me that's a concern is just the level of deferred maintenance that hasn't even been identified at the treatment plants, and identifying what deferred maintenance is there, what the cost is, what the replacement cycle is, so we can start really better evaluating that when we're looking at at our fees. It concerns me that we're going to have, $1 million replacement that we didn't have on our radar because we didn't have a good tracking of that asset management. And like he said, these are, what was the wastewater treatment plant, $300 million?
The wastewater treatment plant is $340 million. And at the moment, there is about $100 million worth of work required on that water treatment plant to get it into a good, overall good operational condition. I can list off the items that are actually failed in there if you need me to. We need a new SBR, we need new electrics, we need new circulation pipe work, we need new discharge pipe work associated with size, because at the moment we have surcharges happening inside the plant. And we can help some of that by attacking I&I. So it's not just looking at, you've given me a perfect inlet into the next statement, is that we have a collection system that is feeding our wastewater treatment plant. If we just look at the wastewater treatment plant, I'll spend that $100 million on getting it to treat the 5 million gallons a day that it gets in the winter time, but I can also do it a different way. It may be more cost effective to actually replace or reduce I&I out in the distribution system, lowering the amount of wastewater that goes to the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, so as an asset management planner, that's what they will be looking at and doing and understanding.
So we have a lot of more questions, so let's see if we can.
We're at 9 o'clock, sorry.
Well,
That's all right. Let's keep going. This is very interesting. I'm going to do a little organization. Jonathan next, Mr. Cranston, Mr. Sims, Brian. Take it away.
Thank you. I think that kind of answered my question. I was kind of focused on the specific nature of the role of the infrastructure planning and asset manager in relation to the other parts of the Public Works Administration Department. It sounds like it's more responsible for making the planning on how we're going to be dealing with the deferred maintenance, doing the capital upkeep, and the other positions are focused more on individual projects where the administrative side and the director. Is that a correct understanding?
The director's the overview and controls and manages and pulls all the strings for each of the individual elements of public works. Operations does their operations and maintenance. Planning does the planning of all public works items, including facilities, including pools, and including libraries. So they look at all the facilities, they're going to be looking at all that stuff. They will do the planning, the long term, the short term and the long term. When I say short term, that's the day-to-day scheduling of work associated with operations and maintenance. They'll put out the operations and maintenance plans. They'll also put out the long-term strategic plans, the asset management plans for long-term capital works. Then we've got our implementation team, which is the true engineering team that does the design, coordination, project management and operational transfer to the operations departments. Okay.
Mention that the engineers basically more work than they're able to do. Would adding
Correct.
in the planning manager help reduce some of the work that the current staff is having to do?
Exactly. At the moment, the engineering staff are getting bogged down on doing all those functions that I just listed. They're doing the coordination with operations, they're doing the planning, they're doing the day-to-day interaction with development services. They are doing the engineering coordination with inspection work. They're doing the engineering design coordination work. So they are doing all of the work that should be diversely covered as specialists within the overall team.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Luke.
Like you just said, we've got 2 people doing the work of 4. What I've observed in a lot of other organizations, when you get that, is about the time you hire the next 2, the 2 that you've got are burned out and leave.
Correct.
Do we have a plan to encourage them to stay, or to keep them from burning out, or to...
If we can get people on, if we can get the people on board quick enough, we'll save them from burning out. Quite honestly, they are at that point already. I won't sugarcoat it for you. They are at that point already, and I think Julia recognises that.
And I think that's partly management, where we remind them of their value, remind them that we understand this is hard, that we're trying to find solutions, and that there is an end in sight, that we're not just asking them to do it and do it and do it and do it, and don't understand and appreciate that that's what they're doing. So the plan is, I mean, we're talking to them, we're trying to support them.
And we do have the opportunity that there's a potential that one or more of them may move into one of these other parts of they might take on a different role, and we take on someone to do their role. I know at the moment there is some interest in that opportunity. So, it may be beneficial to the staff that we have there, that they're not bogged down in what they're actually doing, but they'd go and do what they really like doing. So I think it'll be beneficial overall.
Thank you, Luke. That was a good question. Steve?
Well, I was looking at the staffing. So is one of the engineering techs that completed up to engineering associate, is that the carrot out there for them, or am I wrong?
That already happened.
That has already happened. It's not showing that way on the budget book.
I think you're seeing a zero out of the engineering tech 1.
Yes.
And the start of an engineering associate. So that happened at the beginning of this current year. So that we've promoted one of our engineers, yes, in-house.
Right. And then the other question I had, you're looking for a city engineer now, correct?
Yes.
And you mentioned that you were going to try to train them to take over the public works director. Is that?
That's correct.
That is Barry's vision.
Sorry.
We're still working that through, but yeah, I mean, that's certainly one avenue, and if we can find somebody that's really good, that has that potential. But we're hiring a city engineer first, not a city engineer who could potentially, they're not going to be brought in necessarily with that expectation, but that might be a behind-the-scenes expectation if that is viable.
Have you interviewed any public works directors? I think I saw you had a couple applicants on that. Was that on the weekly
we've
report?
had a few applicants for the public works director, and I don't want to say too much publicly about that.
Fair enough.
But we have had a few applicants for that.
All right, that was it.
Mr. Bryan, take it away.
Barry, you make a compelling argument for that position. Sorry.
Excellent, perfect.
Barry, you make a compelling argument for that position. I guess I would support it. Number one, I would ask you how we're going to utilize what type of software right now to do that asset management, and if it hasn't been budgeted in, we should probably budget that in. I'm familiar with an asset tool that I use in my work that could very well could encompass everything that you just talked about. It's not cheap, let me tell you, but I think for us to be able to, in my world, to be able to control that and monitor that the number of assets we have, and our infrastructure is in the same condition. It's aging, it's archaic in some situations, but I think the same description you just gave is really reflective in what I do on a daily basis. So I see your vision from that standpoint. I support it. I just think we should need to make sure we look at it holistically to make sure we have all the tools when that person comes aboard to really carry out your vision.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. We have one person in the organisation who has, in actual fact, initiated their own asset management tool and gone out and bought a relatively simple tool to do some simple work that they're doing right now. Now, that is not going to work for the whole organisation. There are different levels of value of tools. I can buy you an Excel spreadsheet and do some stuff. I can buy you a GIS-based asset management tool that'll cost, say, $20,000 or $30,000. I can buy you City Works at $100,000. I can buy you SAP at $1 million. You know, it really depends on where we want to go. I would be strongly suggesting that we go to the middle range on this for this organisation, and middle to lower, to be quite honest. We're not that big. We don't need a ginormous tool. But I'd be interested to talk to you about what you are using and what we can in actual fact implement here.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think the last thing I would just mention is over the last couple of days with myself and Julia and the mayor from Sublimity, just the interaction and the understanding of what we're going to the Capitol to ask for is pretty mind-blowing, to be honest with you. On Friday, we went to the Capitol to advocate for $4.6 million for the wastewater treatment plant. And doing just a little bit of research that I did for that, our folks over there are doing a heck of a job at this point keeping that together, not having their ability that they really need and the resource that they really need. And so we sat at the Capitol for 3 hours for 2 minutes of testimony. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that, and we are advocating, trying to figure out anything we can to keep the morale of the employees up, to try to show them that we are trying to take the steps necessary that we identify to try to get us some relief. So I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to support what you just said, Brian, and say that I think you went for the electrical money, right?
We did.
Yeah. Okay. So the electrical stuff at the wastewater treatment plant is 1970s electrical work. It's still just holding together, and I say just holding together. We need to replace the whole electrical system in the wastewater treatment plant as it stands right now. And it is old, it's ancient, and it needs very, very hands-on, tender, loving care to keep it working. Sorry?
And I'm going to take a minute, and I'm sorry, I know we're over, but you have an amazing staff here at the city, and most of them are the ones behind the scenes that don't ever want recognition, that, you know, would be embarrassed about it, won't come to a council meeting to get recognition. But you have people that are so frugal, that are saving the city so much money by doing things themselves and making things and jerry-rigging things, and that's fantastic, but it also isn't sustainable and isn't fair, and they deserve an electrical system that actually works and doesn't burn up. They deserve that. And so I just want to I guess end on that note for this evening. And then tomorrow night we'll come back and finish Public Works and finish.
And Barry won't talk as much.
Oh,
okay.
I don't think that's true. Unless there's other questions about Public Works Administration.
I'm just going to add, I'm not sure how I'm going to pose this, but yes, tomorrow night will be when all of us will be listening and delving into the minutia of all the numbers, because I don't know if I want to speak for all of us, but I'm stunned to hear that we've got so much deterioration in our assets. That's kind of really bothering me. And this is now my third year for the people on YouTube. This is my third year here, and I've never heard this before.
Well, and because a lot of it didn't come out until Barry came on board and really highlighted some things. We knew about the streets. So just to set expectations, tomorrow my hope is that we'll get through the rest of our presentation, and then the committee will ask questions, discuss. We don't anticipate, I mean, if you're ready to do that, great, more power to you, but we don't anticipate that you'll make a decision tomorrow night. We anticipate you'll ask the questions that you need answers to, that we can then spend the next day getting for you, so that you will make a decision on Thursday night. So that's kind of our expectation for you.
So in a twofold thing, the thing that you've educated me about is human beings, which in my opinion, after being a 32-year-long truck driver, it's the human factor that's number one. So I see that on page 82, but then the material factor, we're going to see a lot about that tomorrow, right? Okay, thanks. Okay. If there's no other questions, why don't we go ahead and adjourn and have a fun work day tomorrow, and we'll be back here at 6 o'clock. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned for now.